Oh, you're doing him first? Yeah, sorry. Yeah, that's fine. You should take it. One more belt and one
Okay, we need to take another start. Come back to the table, please. Sorry.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
Thank you. I have 5 slides, count them, 5, so I won't hold up for too long. I'll be very quick, I promise, Michael. I'll get us back on schedule. Although I believe we're not.
I've got all the Mariner pictures if you want.
All 22 and a bit of them, all 21 and a bit of them.
Yes.
Okay, I've got all of them as well, but I'm not going to show it. I'm not going to show them. I got a free online subscription to the New York Times, and I dived through their archive, and I noticed these 2 front pages, which I thought were quite good. That's the one from Pluto a couple of weeks ago, and exactly 50 years, give or take a couple of hours earlier, was Mars, the Mars Mariner 4 probe. The Mariner 3 hadn't been too successful. There was a whole Mariner sequence of flights that went up to, well, certainly Mariner 10 went to Mercury, so there was a whole lot of them. And, but the aim of 1964 for the NASA Mariner program was to send craft to Mars, and they attempted to send Mariner 3, and then they sent Mariner 4. Mariner 4 on that day was the very first planetary flyby of any spacecraft, and that's the image it took. And so, black and white, very highly rasterized, not very many bits in there. The total data of Mariner 4 was about 5 megabits. 5 million bits. So I got those 2 images from the New York Times. Comparison of Mariner 4 and New Horizons. New Horizons about twice as much power at their planets. New Horizons had slightly more weight, slightly less power. Mariner 4 being operating close to the sun was using solar cells, way out of Pluto. The power source for New Horizons is a radioisotope thermal generator. All right. Both used Atlas-class launch vehicles. Their closest approach to the planet was similar. Now the data rates are interesting. The Mariner 4 data rate at low gain was 8 bits per second. At high gain was 33 bits per second. Yeah. And it had 5 megabits to download.
So it's one more diesel.
Yeah, these are slower than the old dial-up modems. It had a total of 5.2 million bits of data. Compare that to New Horizons. It's got 2 solid-state 8 gigabit recorders on it. But one's a backup to the other one, so it's basically 8 gigabits of data. Gigabytes. Now its high gain data rate, its low gain data rate is 1 kilobit a second, and its high gain is 4 kilobits a second. What it's been doing since the flyby mode has been downloading stuff in low gain. It's been trickling it down. We're emptying a swimming pool through a drinking straw. It will take 16 months. That's the best analogy I can think of.
Why not the high gain?
They get limited opportunity to operate it in a burst mode. They basically said, we're going to lock you away for 22 hours. We won't talk to you. We'll leave you alone. Knock yourself out with everything you got for 22 hours. But the very first thing to do in that 22 hours is take a Neil Armstrong contingency sample. Take a sample of things from all your instruments, including a couple of nifty happy snaps, wrap them up in a zip file or something, and that'll be the first thing we download in case things don't go too well. And then you can start trickling back bits and pieces to us after that. It'll take 16 months to download everything through the drinking straw. When they get an opportunity on the spacecraft and with the Deep Space Network, they'll suck it down at 4 kilobits a second. You do the math on 4 kilobits and 8 gigabytes, right? Remember our old dial-up modems when we used to get excited about 1200 baud?
What do you mean old?
Our slightly not new modems. Actually Mariner 4 went into solar orbit and it lasted about 3 years. Already, New Horizons has lasted 3 times longer and it's ongoing. And we were just discussing the day before, the 2 Kuiper Belt objects are going to be in the 2019 time frame. And it depends which one they go for. And actually, Alan Stern, the principal investigator, is going to make the recommendation to NASA next month, according to Dr. Wikipedia. So we'll go with that. Now, there were only 22 images, black and white images, collected by Mariner 4, and actually only 21 complete images, and they didn't get all the data for the 22nd image. I'll give you a sample of one of them. I think this is image 4, and this is me being an amateur scientist. This is the highly rasterized one, and I thought, this is knowing a bit of science, I thought there's a regular pattern in there. There must be a mathematical way of removing that. And I thought a fast Fourier transform. Don't worry about it, you can look it up. Sure enough, there's a plug-in module for Photoshop that does FFTs. So I downloaded it for free and I ran the image through that. And that's my amateur attempt at trying to remove the raster. What that just shows is that you can digitally manipulate images and you can remove artifacts and improve the quality of it. So I think that's Mariner 4 image number 4 on the left, and that's my attempt to clean it up a bit. I've got a couple other things on random subjects. That was slide 3, here's slide 4. These are artifacts of Apollo soils that people might not have known about. They released a special perfume.
Stealing my thunder there.
Oh, I didn't mean to do that, but I thought this was too good to resist. So this is my only slide, I promise you. EPAS, Experimental Project Apollo Soyuz, is what that stands for. And I didn't know there were cigarettes, so I only discovered that in the last couple of weeks. So I thought that was pretty good too. You wouldn't do that today if you were running a mission to promote cigarettes.
The Russians would.
Actually, you're right, the Russians would. Yeah, so just eliminate the left hand of that photo and
For a ruble.
And my last slide, what did I put on that? Oh yeah, the month of July, seems to be a lot of stuff happening. So I just did a search through Encyclopedia Astronautica at astronautics.com, and I pulled out a bunch of things that happen in the month of July. Let me tell you, this is a subset. This is about 100th of things that happen in July. I didn't put down the numerous Cosmos launches, Soyuz launches, ISS events, a million other things that have happened in July, but these are just some of the significant ones. The yellow ones are planetary events that happen.
Is July the most prolific month?
Yeah. It's quite incredible. I have no idea.
Middle of summer?
No, I think it's just...
No. But if you put any other month in, you get the same result.
If you go to that site, if you go to the chronology database on astronautics.com, it's pretty extensive. But I just got curious about the planetary events. And things like, Ranger 7 and Surveyor 4, Opportunity, Voyager 2, Jupiter flyby, Viking 1 Mars landing, Mars 4 launch, Venera lands on Venus, Ranger 7 on the moon. So I just thought that was pretty cool. Apart from Apollo 11, Apollo 15, Apollo Soyuz, and all the other things. It's the 50th anniversary of, sorry, not the 50th anniversary, that's wrong. Cape Canaveral was first used as a launch site in July in 1950, so that's 65 years ago.
You sure it wasn't earlier than that?
No, yeah, I am sure that it wasn't earlier than that. I don't know if Joe Citizen and his son took down a skyrocket and launched it out of a milk bottle. That I don't know. But in terms of actual...
a bit earlier than 50. But you could be...
Apparently it was the first time that NASA, in fact it was on the NASA history website, But this month, July, back I think this week, was when they...
And it was a V2 rocket with a scaffold, a painted scaffold as the
I
access
don't
to.
think it was a V2. I can tell you what it was. Anyway, they're my 5 slides, folks. I just thought I'd throw in that mixed bag. 10 minutes?
Beautiful. Thank you, Len.
Any questions? Love questions.
With that July thing, it's the same with accidents, isn't it? They're always in January, is that right? January, Feb? Disasters.
Never been an actuary for an insurance company. Is that right?
I think most of those things have happened in January.
I know someone who works in the mental health industry, and January is a great month for business, and July is a great month for business. January, because it's post-holidays, it's after Christmas, New Year, there's a lot of depression. And in the middle of winter, when it's dark and dank and dismal, there's a lot of depression. So business is booming for psychologists and psychiatrists.
Okay, tonight's retrospective is going to be on the Apollo-Soyuz test project. And thankfully Tim put his hand up to help us out.
All right, well, I'll correct that and say that Peter actually rang me last Saturday and asked me to do it because he's obviously only here in avatar form. So, yeah, I started looking into it and I realised that I started taking an interest in space just before Apollo-Soyuz came on. I do remember the first moonwalk. But this was the first real televised space event when I was really interested in it. So it did bring back quite a few memories. So what was the Apollo-Soyuz? This is what they wanted to do. You can read that. I don't know how much time I've got, but I better fly through some of this. There was a lot of talk going on in the early days about what they're going to do after the Apollo missions. I haven't really got time to read through all of that, but basically they were coming up with a few ideas what to do with the extra hardware left over from Apollo, because there was a few after the cancellation of 18, 19 and 20. So some of the interesting things that were talked about was possibly using Skylab as a joint meeting place. There was also talk about having another Skylab and using a couple of the leftover Apollos to go up to that. They eventually settled on the Apollo-Soyuz test project as we know it to be. So, but there was a few iterations before that. There's some of the timeline there, what happened in 1975. The launch from from Russia, I can't pronounce it. It was about 7.5 hours prior to the launch at Canaveral of the Apollo mission. And read the rest later. That was the signing of the agreement by US President Nixon. This was just part of the space talks that were going on at the time, or the other talks that were going on at the time. Okay, so that's the mission. The two systems would launch from their respective countries. The main feature of the Apollo liftoff was the docking module that was in here, like where the lunar module used to be in the moon rockets. The command service module would turn around, pick it up, and then it would pick it up and then pull away, and it would look like this. You'll see better photos in a minute. And then they would catch up with the Soyuz and dock and shake hands and everyone happy. is there was a lot of media hype at the time. This was the two superpowers after settling the Cold War, essentially. So there was a lot of commemorative stamps. Len's already showed you the cigarettes that came out. I believe this picture here was actually done by Alexei Leonov, one of the cosmonauts. So he was having a bit of a joke there. Russians tend to think of Americans as cowboys. There's the lasso. There were model rockets. There's a Rebel model that you could have bought at the time. There are the logos, or the patches. That word there is Soyuz in Russian. That patch actually can turn the other way around. Apparently in Russia it was the Soyuz Apollo test project, not the Apollo Soyuz. There's your crew. A lot of you will recognise most of them. Pete Slayton, of course, Tom Stafford, Vance Brand, Alexei Leonov, and someone remind me who this guy was? Yeah, him. Forgetting his name. So lots of those publicity shots. There was a lot of photo opportunities while they were training. A lot of cultural exchange. Americans visited Moscow. That's Red Square. That's Alexei Leonov mixing it up with some Native Americans. I tried to find a fourth photo. I didn't have time. Sorry. That's just some of the details when they were launched, where from. Yeah, some of the orbital details. Okay, the two Russian astronauts, as I said, we've still got Alexei. He's still around, but it appears that just last year we lost Kupasov. And they're the backup crew. That was the launch. That's what they look like, taken from the Apollo's capsule. This was the US crew. Now, everybody knows who Deke Slayton was, original 7 astronaut. He finally got his flight. Now, he was the docking module pilot. In the Apollo capsules, they all had to have their role. You had to have a commander. You had to have a lunar module pilot and a command module pilot. Well, there was no lunar module, so the lunar module pilot became the docking module pilot.
Didn't Deacon have a heart problem or something?
Yeah, Deke Slayton got grounded before he could fly in the Mercury missions with a heart fibrillation problem or heart flutter or something. But he finally got cleared. And then him and his mate Al Shepard worked hard to get him onto a flight, and this is one that came up. He was the old man there. Some of the other flights these guys did, actually I might just zip back to these guys. Alexei did Vostok 2 mission. That was the one, the first spacewalk. First ever spacewalk, and Kupasov did Soyuz 6 and Soyuz 36. Now, the interesting thing about Mr. Kupasov was that he was part of the original crew intended to fly on Soyuz 2, but it had the same parachute sensor fault as Vladimir Komarov's Soyuz 1 flight. So that Soyuz 2 flight was just went up on its own, no crew. He was later scheduled to go up on the Soyuz 11 flight, but he developed a lung condition which they thought might have been TB. So they actually cancelled the whole crew and put on the backup crew from Soyuz 11. And Soyuz 11, unfortunately, was a fatal one for the crew. One of his crewmates on Soyuz 11 was actually Alexei Leonov as well. So he actually saved Alexei's life by developing his lung condition. I can imagine what Alexei's attitude to him might have been when he got kicked off Soyuz 11 originally, but probably thanked him later. Right, going back to these guys, Vance Brand, that was his first flight, but he did go up in 3 shuttle flights after that. Tom Stafford did Gemini 6, Gemini 9, and Apollo 10 as well. I've never known why Tom Stafford never went and landed on the moon. He got so close to it in Apollo 10, but didn't get an actual moon landing.
Pretty close.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was slated for Apollo 19, I think. Was he rated on that?
I'm not sure. Was also, what's his name? Jack Swaggart was originally slated for the ASTP crew. Apparently he got booted off because of his involvement with the Apollo 15 postage stamp. Yeah.
No, Apollo 13.
From Apollo 13, yeah, he was going to go up on the ASTP, but
the stamps was Apollo 15.
yeah, but he was involved in
He was involved with
yeah, some background work, some liaison with the people on the ground.
Apollo 15 was a travesty because they actually did nothing wrong. They actually didn't break any rules, didn't break any rules, and they were all around it. They never flew again.
And to this day, Scott and Warden won't talk to each other. They won't be in the same room together.
But his warning blames Scott for all the other.
Well, Scott was a golden boy, and he kind of, his career was over, but he was held up as the great American hero, and Warden copped all the crap.
Scott's bitter and twisted.
And Scott's Stallion.
Scott's very bitter and twisted about the whole thing too.
Which was Scott's idea.
Okay, shots of the Apollo. This is obviously the docking module. We'll talk about that in a minute. It's the interesting part of the whole mission. No, they were taken from the Soyuz, obviously. Right, the docking module. Now, this is the real interesting part about the whole thing. It's not a tunnel, a docking tunnel. They didn't open up the hatches and happily float through. You can see there's gas storage tanks. And the problem with the Apollo is they operated in a pure oxygen 5 psi environment, whereas the Soyuz operated in a sea level natural air environment, oxygen, nitrogen atmosphere. So there was no way that the Soyuz people could go this way through the tunnel directly into a low pressure oxygen atmosphere because they'd get bends. So they had to basically use this as an airlock. So the original first transfer from the Apollo in this direction, the 2 Apollo astronauts came in here, and that was Stafford and Dick Slayton. And they had to leave Vance Brand behind. There was always had to be 1 astronaut in controls. They sealed off the tunnel there, and then they started introducing nitrogen into the atmosphere from one of the tanks and started increasing the pressure. And at the same time in the Soyuz capsule, they actually reduced the pressure a little bit just to balance it out. And then finally they were able to open this door and the Soyuz door. So you actually had 4 doors, the Apollo side, the door on the docking module, the 3rd door on the docking module, and then the 4th door on the Soyuz. It wasn't a simple transfer. If they were going the other way, it's a reverse process. They would have natural air in there. The cosmonauts would have to, 1 cosmonaut I think, would have to then slowly depressurise and get used to the low pressure pure oxygen environment of the Apollo capsule. So it was never a simple, easy process. Just another picture of what it looks like, cutaway. That's the original positioning of the guys with for the famous first handshake. That's something that I remember from the newscasts at the time. It was very famous. But at the time, the doors here were closed, and one of the Apollo astronauts is in there. There's your phone. That's still taken from video footage. The plaque, that's another thing I remember them doing. They joined up the plaque. It was actually two plaques. They had, it was in two pieces each side, but there were two plaques in total. I wondered who got to take the plaque down again, because each side brought up their own half. But who got to take it down again? Well, they had two plaques altogether, so both sides took down one each. They also had these coins with which they joined up as well. There's a whole lot of letter signing and commemoration, memorabilia signed, and lots of handshaking and video opportunities. There was a call from Jerry Ford and a letter from who was the Soviet leader at the time? Was it Brezhnev? Can't remember. And while they're up there, they performed a number of experiments. One of them was when they detached the Apollo again and it floated away and eclipsed the sun, while Soyuz capsule took a few photos. They rejoined up and tested the docking again, and the second docking was under control of the Soyuz at that time. First docking was Apollo guiding it in. The second one was Soyuz guiding it in. Now the re-entry, the Russians came down earlier, but the Apollo stayed up for a few extra days. But when they did come down, they had quite a life-threatening incident that happened. Basically, Brand forgot to turn on the Earth landing system. He claimed he didn't hear it because of all the noise, thruster firing and re-entry and everything. Staff was supposed to be calling it out. So he didn't hear it, he didn't do it. So it got to a point where he noticed that the drogue chutes hadn't come out and the cover was still on. So he manually hit the two switches to deploy them. By that stage, it was getting a bit low, and it's a little bit hazy about exactly what happened at this point. But because of the manual deployment of the drogue chutes, the command module was swaying around a lot, and the thrusters were firing madly to try and stabilise the thing. But at that point, the cabin relief valve had already opened. This is where it's starting to mix outside air with internal cabin pressure to start raising the internal cabin pressure. Because the thrusters were firing at the same time, the exhaust fumes from the thrusters were getting sucked into the capsule. This was making the astronauts, their eyes sting, and they were coughing quite badly in the end. Brand then deployed the parachutes. They had a hard landing in the stable 2 position. That's the capsule facing down in the water. At this point, Brand was unconscious from the fumes. Stafford retrieved some oxygen masks and put it on Brand's face and waited until he regained consciousness. And then they uprighted the capsule and vented it. but as a result of the fumes, they spent 2 weeks in hospital. It was actually fairly close to being 3 fatalities there. It was an interesting part of the mission. It's just a splashdown there. Now, these two guys, Tom Stafford, Alexei Leonov, they very recently had a reunion. There's a whole bunch of photos on the web about this. They were meeting Vladimir Putin. We're living old times, so you can see Tom's starting to look pretty old, but Alexei's still got it. He's got still looking pretty healthy there. Now, these photos I actually took myself. This is in the Achievement Park in Moscow, taken in 1984. And you can see the stand, taking over the stands and the capsules, they're all pretty identical to the photo I took in 2007 at the Smithsonian in Washington. The only real difference I can see is the covers have been taken off the docking module there. You can see here the spheres for the gases used to pressurise the docking module. But other than that, the stands are almost identical. The capsules are almost identical.
When was that photo in the Science Centre? When was that taken?
This one was 1984 when I was in Moscow. This was 2007. Now, they are separate things. They're not the same one. I was trying to see if they were the same one, but they are not. This one with this Apollo system here, just read it. That was Command Service Module 105, and it was used for acoustic checks, and then was put up for display. So 104 was Apollo 9, 106 was Apollo 10. 111 was the Apollo Soyuz capsule.
That's still there in California Science Centre. So I was there last year.
Oh, there is another one from California Science Centre.
Oh, there's two, is there? It's the one that has the space shuttle.
Oh no, sorry. The actual command module that returned to Earth from the Apollo Soyuz test project is the one at the California Science Centre. That's where it's displayed.
Was there last year? I didn't see it.
I didn't see it here. I was there last year.
Well, that's what I got off the interweb.
Okay.
I haven't seen it there myself. I can vouch for these ones because I was there, but they're not the flight modules.
Yeah, I was there last year. This wasn't on display there.
Okay.
Yeah.
It wouldn't look like this. I think it's just the command module.
Yeah, even the command module.
Okay.
I wasn't there.
Well, it's something I got off the web just today, I think.
Did you type that, Tim? Because you actually said the Smithsonian before when you were talking.
Oh no, that picture's from the Smithsonian.
Right.
That's the one I took.
That's the Smithsonian building.
That's
at the Smithsonian.
That's just the display.
Yes.
What I'm talking about here is the actual module that flew in space.
The command module's the thing at the top.
Yes, that's the cone.
Okay, yeah. So that was there.
Yeah.
So that was there.
Ah.
The California Science Centre. Yeah.
Good. And the flight module for the Soyuz 19 was there. Actually, one of the interesting things, it was called Soyuz 19, but the Apollo Command Service Module in some places got referred to as Apollo 18. I don't think that stuck really, it wasn't really Apollo 18. Alright, so that's the end of the slideshow. Have we got time for a 12-minute?
Yeah. We can go until we get kicked out, or we could finish now.
What's our kick out time? I thought it was 9:30.
No, it's 10. 10.
Well, that's does anybody see the
That's
The what?
Oh, that's yours.
Lights Club show.
Ah, no.
Hey, stop this thing.
No, it's a new,
Hit the red button at the top left.
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, that one.
Not
Let's see how.
Full.
I'll plot it from the projector on the screen.
It's a new finance.
Go.
Back in the door between East and West during the Cold War.
Apollo Houston, I got two messages for you. Moscow is go for docking. Houston is go for docking. It's up to you guys. Have fun. All right, sounds good.
This only just came out for some.
Hi, I'm Bill Barrett, NASA's Chief Historian. Every day on the International Space Station, NASA and our partner nations collaborate above the Earth at humanity's total in space. As the space station orbits above us every 90 minutes, 16 times a day, this multinational crew performs important scientific research off the Earth for the Earth. The science conducted on our orbiting laboratory advances global scientific knowledge about our home planet, as well as space, physical, and biological sciences. Today, American astronaut Scott Kelly and Russian cosmonaut Mikhail Kornienko are in the midst of a one-year mission aboard the space station that's providing important insights into the effect of microgravity on human physiology. This information will be critical for preparing humanity for longer duration missions on NASA's journey to Mars. This amazing research laboratory continues the global cooperation that has always been at the core of NASA's mission. But 40 years ago, a big breakthrough came. The two Cold War adversaries, the United States and the Soviet Union, joined hands in exploration. Let's take a look back at this first time these two great space powers flew together. The seeds of cooperation planted then continue to flourish today.
We were in a position to open a crack in the door between East and West during the Cold War.
Apollo Houston, I got two messages for you. Moscow is go for docking. Houston is go for docking. It's up to you guys. Have fun. All right, sounds good.
Mid-July 1975, an American Apollo spacecraft and the Soviet Soyuz spacecraft prepared to join in Earth orbit, 140 miles above the Atlantic near Portugal. During their two-day joint flight, astronauts and cosmonauts transferred between spacecraft. They conducted space experiments, and they tested a compatible rendezvous and docking system, evaluating its potential as the universal standard on future spacecraft for docking and rescue. The mission climaxed more than 3 years of planning and preparation, a time during which differences in language, in technology, in political creed were set aside in favor of the common goal. This was the mission that opened the door to international manned spaceflight, the mission that set the course for joint flights of the future. This was the mission of Apollo Soyuz.
Get together two superpowers in space, but it was kind of unique that here each country had at least 10,000 nuclear weapons aimed at each other. But yet, we're going to have a joint cooperation in space.
This was the peak of the Cold War. Both sides believe that the other side is the evil enemy.
The mission was unique, and it was supported because I think the populations on each side had a desire for the Cold War to be over.
But at that time, the relations were not very good between our countries, but that project made us work together.
It was quite a symbolic effort to open the relationship between the two countries. Well, we trained together for 2 years. In fact, it was our side that insisted we have to start 2 years in advance. And the Soviets then said no. Of course, everything was, they say, no, showy secret. Everything was a big secret.
Tom Stafford has an Oklahoman pronunciation. It's very hard to understand, and I think that even his own wife did not understand him very well sometimes.
We had a lot of fun. Everybody made mistakes in the other language, and in some cases it's like learning listening to a 3-year-old trying to get better in English. So we made mistakes, and everybody got a lot of laughs out of that.
We learned to understand each other, and we spoke the language that we named Ruston, that is Russian in Houston. And so eventually we were able to overcome the language barrier.
The big slate was a wonderful person. One of the original 137 astronauts, and due to medical problem, was taken off a flight. We were supposed to fly the second orbital mission in the United States, and then he was head of the astronaut group. He was my boss for many years, and I was commander, and he was on the crew. And he was a wonderful person, did a great job, and he finally got a chance to fly in space. But it was really wonderful after we trained in the mock-ups, the simulators back and forth for 2 years. And finally, they launched from Kazakhstan. Back to the wind, and 7.5 hours later, when the rover came across the Cape, we launched 2 days of phasing and catch-up when we went into the final rendezvous and docking.
Okay, Captain. This is Apollo Control. Apparently the DPI maneuver was indeed successful. Tom Stafford reported from Apollo that he was station keeping with Soyuz. Both control centers, Moscow and Houston, have given a go for docking. Soyuz, Apollo, I do 5
That's what made it easy for us to communicate with our U.S. counterparts, because we were professionals speaking the same professional language, and this helped us build trust as well.
Please don't forget about the engine. Less than 5 meters distance. 3 meters. Cutting 1 minute. Contact. Capture.
I knocked on the hatch, I heard him knock back. Then I said to him, question, don't do the top. Like, who's ever? Like, 140 cars up, who else can do it?
Order show, Oscar Light Route 3.
Okay, turn on the camera.
It was really the handshake which symbolized potential lessening of tension in the Cold War and friendship.
So may our joint work in space serve for the benefit of all countries and peoples on the earth.
Alexei's a great artist, and during those 2 days, he sketched in a black and white sketch 2 pictures of me. And he gave them to me. I have them very proudly framed in my house, and they'll be going into a museum.
Before flight, I prepared stickers, labels for Stoli vodka, Moscow vodka, etc. I took containers with coffee, with Bush, and applied those labels on those containers. And so when we sat down to eat in the vehicle, according to the Russian tradition, we must celebrate our first meeting. So they were very uncomfortable, but they went ahead and opened the containers and said, let's have a drink to our first meeting. And once they started drinking, they realized that this was Bush. That's what was in the containers, and everybody was disappointed, actually.
After 2 days, we docked, spent 2 days together, undocked, redocked together with test, then finally undocked, and we slowly started drifting off the runway. We're about 30, 40 miles apart.
We start receiving the signal from Apollo, and I listening to music, and I hear some women laughing, and I can hear some glasses clinking. I press the transmission button and ask Vance, what's going on? And they're saying, oh, we're having a party over here. We're done working, and so we're partying. Turns out that they recorded all this noise, all this sounds while still on Earth, and then they played it back to pretend that they had a party.
The friendship has lasted very dearly all these years. I consider Joe Alexei, they are off like a brother to me practically. And what we do today on the International Space Station and the type of working groups we have and how we approach things is all based on what we worked out for Apollo Soyuz starting from scratch.
Tell Professor Bushulian it was a soft docking.
Well, that's all. It was a good show. And looking forward now.
So I'm rather proud of what the whole team accomplished. So that kind of opened the gate to go forward. International cooperation and exploration.
Together we have captured data.
Don't think it's all over. It's just starting.
It was a first 40 years ago. And this tradition will be continued on the space shuttle here and today on the International Space Station. The successful Apollo Soyuz test project demonstrated how much was possible through international partnerships. As we move from the International Space Station in low Earth orbit outward to the vicinity of the moon and visit asteroids, we'll continue learning the skills and technology that will enable a journey to Mars. There's one lesson we already know, and we learned just how powerful it can be in 1975. That lesson is the value of international cooperation on the road to space.
Thank you, Tim. That was great.
I have one personal anecdote about Apollo Soyuz. At the time, I was living in New Zealand, and there were 2 TV channels, Television 1 and Television 2. And on the night that they were showing news about the docking and so on, it was Friday night, which in New Zealand is late shopping night. And I got dragged out to do shopping, which I hate doing. and went into George Court's department store in Karanga Happy Road in Auckland, and they had 2 TV sets mounted up. One showing television 1 and the other one showing television 2. And of course the news is on television 1. So I thought, news time, I better see it. So I went up to the thing, and there were a whole lot of kids sitting there in front of the TV. Were they watching Apollo Soyuz? No, they were sitting here all watching this TV, which had the sound on, this one over here being silent. So there I stood watching the Apollo Soyuz docking and so on silently, while over here the kids had the sound on and so on. And guess what this program was showing? Lost in Space. And just a thing about IMAX. Some of you may not have seen the film Journey into Space, which is showing in IMAX at the moment. If you want to see it in the next few weeks, because IMAX is closing next month, in the middle of the month, for refurbishment. It'll reopen with laser projection. Whatever that means. Anyway, if you want to see Journey into Space, which is cobbled together partly from the previous IMAX movies, and it also has some new stuff in it as well. Worth a look. It's not the best IMAX space movie, but still worth going to see. But if you want to see it, go in the next few weeks.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrew. Thank you everyone for coming.
Are you going to mention the Buzz Aldrin talk?
Oh, no. No, but some of you may know that Buzz Aldrin is coming out to Australia. He's going to be speaking at the Melbourne Town Hall on Sunday, November the 29th. There is a pre-sale starting on the tomorrow night. So if you're a subscriber to Ticketek or whatever, you can get your tickets early. Otherwise, they don't go on sale until the 3rd of August. And some of us were wondering if you're interested in going along, whether we should go out afterwards or something like that, have a bite to eat, something like that.
Get a group ticket.
Or get a group ticket or whatever. Apparently there are tickets available where you can go behind the scenes and meet him and all that sort of stuff. According to the woman that posted this on Facebook, she claimed it was $750, which wouldn't surprise me in the least. But when you actually go on the Ticketek site and you look at the range of prices, it says $189.
There's only 30 spots for that.
And there's only 30 spots for the meet and greet. So I'm not quite sure how much it is or whatever. So, but yeah. So,
it's not just Buzz Aldrin, it's Ray Martin as well.
In that case.
So, for those of you who don't know, he's actually talking about his mission to Mars. It's subtitled Mission to Mars. And so it's all about Buzz talking about his ideas, about his concepts for getting to Mars. Although from the promotional blurb, he's also going to be talking a bit about his career and so forth, as you'd expect, I suppose. Interesting, the promotional material had a few inaccuracies and a few sort of exaggerations in it.
Did you see that response to my post? They said, thanks for the correction, this is what Buzz gave us.
All right. Yeah, well, that doesn't surprise me either. There was some of the promotional material said that the first successful spacewalk was Buzz.
Wasn't it?
Alexi Raynon was actually.
We need white just float around his
Thanks, David.
do you remember there was a program on Channel 10 about 6 or 7 years ago called Where Are They Now? And Buzz Aldrin was on. It was Channel 10. Was that? What's the name of the Channel 10 show? Says he won. So I heard somebody else at this thing on Sunday. A friend of mine thought the producer of that segment.
Does everyone like to use venues? Yes. New venues?
She's coming with the
I've been almost 7 years since they
anyway, when he comes to Australia, he did an interview and there's a huge amount of money to come out. So
Yes.
and all the expenses paid.
Actually, sort of, I was more used to it. Not that I've been to board those
So it sort of says where his priorities lie.
No, we just leave their equipment in there. Oh, it's okay, I've been down. We knew about that earlier, so. No worries, good on you. Thanks for coming.
I'm trying to get his. I mean, you guys have just cannot get on any second super astronaut. Exactly. That's when it was pretty. Oh yeah. But no, he apparently was quite frank about his.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, no. I'm still looking at So does it have audio, like, just that we didn't, for some reason they were somewhere down in the yeah, what do you do after you get this? Wondering whether Sophie's mic?
I must, that time now I try it.
So which,
That one. No, this one.
ah, right.
Same as the VGO.
Okay. Oh, I see. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What
What it actually is.